Well, hey kids, welcome back. Kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but we're working on that C500 connector again. Gonna make a bypass for it. It was damaged. Worked for a long time, but we're gonna make it work for a much longer time. And we're also gonna show you how to take off that rear part of the console. It's not hard. Just needs a couple tools. Do the bypass. Could apply to a lot of other products, especially GM stuff where you can't get the connector anymore. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Let's do it. Okay, that's what we're working on down there. That's the C500 connector that we had apart in episode 9, I believe. Like I said earlier, there's a whole series on this little car, among many other things on the channel. But if you're into Fieros, for sure, go check those out. And we did get a temporary fix, as it turns out, to get this thing going to where the main power cables going from the battery via the starter to the front of the car through this firewall on the back here were damaged on the plug. It had overheated because somebody had removed the fusible links and melted, and it worked for quite a while. But we're gonna have to do something different. So let's get started. All right, well, we've got this thing loose. Maybe hard to kind of see what's going on here unless you're familiar with it. This was plugged in back there. It has there's kind of two parts to it. It has a bolt that goes all the way through. And I did mention this in the previous video, or the last time we dealt with this. I think, like I said, episode 9. You'd think everything would be metric fasteners on this, and for the most part it is. But this is one of the cases where it's not, and it's you see the head of the bolt in there. That single bolt kind of captures both halves. You can see there's one still plugged in there, which that's kind of the like the body harness. This is more like engine power and other accessories. But you'd think that'd be metric. Well, it's not. It's 1/4 inch. It took me a while to figure that out, but I thought I'd give that tip because it's hard to see back in there, even that I got this lit up a little bit. And you're kind of reaching over the side of the fender, and you can't really tell what's going on in there. And might be hard to figure out because it was for me. But something I thought that was worth mentioning is, you can take that off of there many different ways. But my go-to for stuff like that's a nut driver because it's easier to hang on to and it's less pieces. They're all one piece, and you can't socket can't fall off an extension or something like that. But something I thought, general information people might not know is, nut drivers have all these different colors on them, and so what, right? The colors are nice. Well, the colors are significant because it's consistent in standard or metric. Whatever color you got, that's the size no matter what brand. And here's 3 different brands here. This is I think this is Excelite or something like that. It's pretty old. Yeah, made in USA though. And one in the middle here is good old, Craftsman. Probably a lot of people have ones like this. And then this one on the far right here is a Ward's, which if you don't know who Ward's is, or Montgomery Ward's, go Google that and find out, because they're long gone. But one of the big chain stores back in the day, and everybody was making their own tools, and this was no exception. Anyway, the point being, they're all red. I mean, they're different shades of red, but they're all red. And red means, in standard stuff, red means 1/4 inch. So it makes it easy if you got them laying in the drawer. Not that you'd memorize that, but at least one size from the other. Now, when you get, eventually they kind of ran out of colors, I think, and they use red again for this 1/2 inch stuff, which, as you can see, 3 different brands. I think Craftsman, and then maybe this one's Chinese or something. and then like a stubby, like more modern Craftsman that looks older, but it just because it's beat up. But you're not going to confuse this big dog with that 1/4 inch. So it just helps you keep them sorted. Like I said, maybe you know that already, but in case you didn't, that's what's going on there. All right, down to brass tacks of the repair. Let me light this up a little better. On the left side here, which it's going to be this wire. I'm trying to do this one-handed. This wire here, that's the one that's causing the problem, because it had melted. You say, and what we did the last time was really just cleaned it up really good, and greased it up and put it back together, and it worked, because it had pieces of plastic and stuff on there. Well, on this side, it's bad enough that terminal, it's kind of out of place. I don't know whether you can really see in there, but it's not like the others. The others are kind of like framed in this connector here. This one's, it's gotten hot and it's just kind of hanging loose in there. Well, it's even worse on the firewall side, on the, I guess you call the female side. Let's see if I can zoom in here and you can see it. It's that one in the lower left. It's the one that doesn't look like the others. Lower left right there, it kind of looks like a claw or something sticking out there, just to the left of the threaded hole in there. It's just kind of flying free in there because the rest of that socket's burnt away, melted away. Well, it does work, and it will make contact, but when you're bouncing down the road, because this thing, it's not super rigid the way it's mounted, because it's got to pass through there, and it's got gaskets and stuff, and it's probably old. This is an 84. So it wiggles, and then the car starts stumbling, and then maybe it'll shut off when you're going 80 on the interstate, which is pretty much top speed for this thing, or as fast as I want to go with it. And it's buzzing pretty tight at that point. But yeah, you lose power at 80, you got to think fast and throw that thing in the neutral and figure out, how do I not get mowed down by a 18-wheeler? So not a good thing. But I had mentioned, like I say, in the previous episode 9, that we dealt with this, that if this doesn't work, we're gonna have to do something. We're gonna have to bypass this, because the chances of finding another connector like this that isn't screwed up, I could probably find another 84, and I think they changed them at 85. I'm not gonna swear to that, but I know they changed little things like that over the years, because I think when they started putting the V6 in this stuck out too far, and they needed to revise it, and that's what I remember. Definitely correct me in the comments. But regardless, let's say that I found one, and I could. Internet's a great thing for that. I found one. It's probably jacked up too, and I'm kind of funny about cutting up, savable cars, and I really hate parts cars, because I'm like, there's so many people that'll they'll have a pretty nice car and they'll be missing a few things. They'll take another restorable car and they'll wreck it they'll just ruin it to where nobody can do anything with it and throw the whole thing away. Well, there's fewer and fewer of any kind of car going, and right now, you can find a Fiero, but 10, 15 years from now, how many are going to be left? So I don't like tearing up whole cars. As far as I know, this isn't reproduced. Haven't really looked around, but I'd be amazed if this was reproduced, because these connectors are connectors like this, at least, they're definitely kind of vehicle specific. And you heard me call this a C500, C for connector. That's how it's labeled in the wire diagram, which I strongly encourage you to get a factory shop manual. Not that you need to know that number, but it'll help you figure out what's going on and where the components are and what they do, which is how we went through the troubleshooting procedure to figure out what was going on in the first place, because I didn't know that this was bad, and I've taken it apart before. I've had the engine out of this several times, engine transaxle out of this, dropped the cradle, and you know, that's why it's there. I mean, the wire just needs to run, you know, from back here to the front, but you need to be able to disconnect it, and that's what all this stuff is for. Well, it's screwed up. We're gonna have to bypass it and make our own disconnect, which we're going to work on next. Okay, we're inside the car now because that's where we're going to start. This is the console, if you know Fieros. This is the console and the I guess how you'd call that the glove box or something up here, but it's in the middle, and you know, as you can see earlier, kind of hinges out. Got owner's manual and stuff like that in there, and I've had this apart before. I think there's a little access port, if you can see in there. Yeah, way down at the bottom. That's kind of to get to the harness and all that. Well, we got to take this all apart because we need to get to the back side of that, because that's where that C500 connector is coming through the firewall. It's coming through into the car, and then you know, routed through here and going back up underneath the dash. And turn the light on here so you can see, because it's going, you know, down the length of the console here, you know, by the side of the shifter, and on underneath the dash, and then up into wherever it needs to go. Like the one that's causing us problems, the cable that's causing us problems is that 10-gauge wire that we need to fix. Goes up to the ignition switch. So we know from the last time I worked on this, there's no breaks from the switch back to the firewall. The problem was in that bulkhead connector, that C500. So I need to look in the manual, which is another good reason to have one, to figure out exactly how to take this apart, or at least, you know, the minimum to get in there. I don't want to just start pulling screws out and find out, well, I didn't need to take those 10 screws out. Those don't even hold it on, or something crazy like that. So, you know, we'll check that out, and we'll go to step 2. Just want to show you what the staging was for that. You know, this piece, at least the door, but I think maybe the whole thing needs to come off. I can't remember. I've put a ECM, you know, engine computer, in this before, and it's behind there too. It's on the other side of that wall that we were looking at, where that, now that I got the light on, maybe you can see that a little better this time. But let me open this glove box up. Yeah, there you go. See that little plug in there? It's back in there, and I know I've had this apart years ago to put a ECM in it right after we bought the car, and I don't remember if I had to take the whole thing out or not to get in there, but it may just be easier because we're unfortunately going to need to drill a hole through there, because we're going to bypass that damaged 10-gauge wire that's in the plug, and kind of run a new lead across there to connect it together, so we don't have to deal with the mangled connection in that melted plug. We're just going to run it separate and make our own disconnect for just that line, just that leg that's feeding the front. Like I said, you know, I don't like, you know, doing something that looks butchered, but, you know, we'll do it right. We'll put a grommet in the hole. We'll seal up all the connections, and it'll be definitely not, you know, concourse correct, which, you know, ain't a real big concern with this old girl. That's okay. It's going to function, and it's going to work the same way, and it allows me to disconnect it if I ever have to drop the cradle again, instead of you know, just wiring it rigid, which we could do. We could just, you know, connect them together, but then I'd have to cut the wire, and you know, that's just silly. You know, that just seems kind of extreme. You know, we can make a disconnect, put a disconnect in there, and keep going, and at least it's functional the way it should be, and serviceable. All right, well, the console wasn't nearly as hard to take apart, at least the back half of it, as I expected. And you don't need a whole lot of tools to do it. Again, just, you know, so you know, don't don't lay your parts on the hood of the car like I'm doing right here. This paint is, you may have seen if you watch the rest of the series, this paint is just atrocious. So I kind of don't care, and I'm using it on the table. It's a bad habit to get into because you'll do it on something you care about. And of course I care about this car, but scratching this paint, no one would ever notice. It's in horrible shape. But let's get back to how to take this out. The first step is, this is your shifter trim plate right here. You pop open your ashtray doors and do little inserts that sit down in there. Lift those out. There's one on each side, and then you can see the little pockets right here. There's 4 screws that hold that on, and they are just, I think they're 7mm head screws. They look like this, basically. And just get you the appropriate nut driver. Let me make sure. Yeah, 7mm. So you really need four tools, maybe 3, maybe 2 if you have a manual, because I'll show you what you got to do for the shifter knob. Because once you get those 4 screws out that you access through the ashtray doors, then you got to take the shifter knob off. Don't try to pry it around, or you'll break that piece. It's old flimsy plastic, and mine wasn't in the greatest of shape. If you got an automatic, this is something that pretty common on General Motors stuff of the era. They have this little staple, and this would be kind of facing away from you like this, so you can't see it normally, but it's on the back side, like towards the windshield, and it has this little staple that you got to pull out. And I've had this out before, and I did struggle with this one. I must have put it in there extra good, and so it took a while to get it out of there. And I don't remember what I used. I mean, usually you can get like a little pick tool or something like that, but I think I ended up having to use this screwdriver in there to pull it out. You basically pull it out because it's kind of trapping it in there, and it just pulls right off the shifter. I mean, once that's out, you can see there's kind of a little hole. Once that staple type piece is out, that's what's pinning it to the shifter rod. Once that's out, this just slides off. Then you can pull this whole thing off of there. Mine has seen better days, for sure. This boot is barely hanging on there, so the elastic on the bottom that kind of clips on there is it's just stretched out so bad. But I don't know. I'm gonna try to fix it. I mean, this thing was dirty from having decades of cigarette ash falling down in there, and actually this bottom piece here, it came apart. The little piece that sits underneath here has the kind of orangey tab on there, and it hangs out underneath this panel here, and it's backlit. There's a little light that plugs into the back of that you make sure don't forget to unplug those things. But we're gonna fix that. I'll put a piece of orange vinyl or something on there to brighten it up. Try to clean all this stuff up. But that's the secondary goal here. Once you get that off, then there's the trim piece that is really just sitting on top of that underneath here. It kind of looks like a U. That just lifts off. There's nothing holding that on. And when that's off, you can see the front mount for the rear console piece. And this is, you can see it's kind of broken. There should be a fork on each side. But that's also just held in with, and I think mine may have been kind of rigged. I'm not sure, but it had a big fender washer and another one of those 7mm bolts, one on each side of the front. And then when you opened up the door, there's 2 more of them. See those 2 holes back there, and those 4 are really all that holds it on. But you gotta watch, because the where the cigarette lighter goes in here, or the 12-volt power port, whatever era you are from, that's got 2 screws there. Also, take that off, and that's where the diagnostics port is on these cars. But that is where you get a different tool, where it's a T15, I think. Yeah, T15 Torx on there. So there's 2 of those in there. You take that off, and what's bolted across here is the actual lighter socket or 12-volt socket on there. Now, the manual says get in there and unplug it. It's got a little light on there so you can see it, but unplug it and take it all out in one piece. I find it's a ton easier to take. There's 2 Phillips head screws, one here, one here. Look like this. Take those out and don't bother disconnecting it. Just swing it out of the way and pull this whole thing out. And that's it. Once that's loose, this whole thing just lifts out, and you end up with it looking like this inside here. You can see what I'm talking about. I didn't bother to disconnect that 12-volt socket because I'm like, man, this stuff's old. I don't want to break it. So and it's easy enough to just slide it out of the way, fish it back through, screw it back in. So that's what it looks like when you pull it all out. You can see the ECM back there, and then that's our wires coming through the opposite side of the firewall. And we're going to find out which wire that is, tap it, and there's, for better or for worse, there's already a small hole drilled in. You probably can't see it, but there is one over here. Yeah, I think barely in the shadows there. There's a hole in there. We're going to use that hole. Might have to enlarge it to put a grommet in there and seal it up. I'm not sure why that hole's there. Kind of odd. Usually don't want any holes in those kinds of panels because get a fire like that and it turns into a blowtorch. But I did want to warn you, don't do what I did and be a dummy and drop one of the screws down in here, because it took me a while to fish it out. Nowhere toward to go really, but seeing where it landed and getting the magnet, it just adds more time to the project. But so we got to take it apart. That's step one. Okay, I do want to fix that indicator that's the paint's worn off of it. I mean, as you can see, this is kind of almost day glow orange, and this is a little bit darker, but it's what I got. So I'm gonna cut a little piece of vinyl off of this, oversized, and we'll trim it up, and it'll show up really good. Yeah, look at that. Shows up way better. Still got to glue it in, but you could barely see it before. Get it cleaned up, clean that lens up, and glue it back in place because it kind of popped off. I think I showed you earlier those little heat stick pins just snapped off when I took it apart. But it's old. But hey, moving forward, at least you'll be able to read the numbers now when it's in gear. Okay, here's the wire that we're going to use to run through there to kind of bypass that damaged connection in that bulkhead connector. It's 10 gauge, and do yourself a favor and get the right color, or at least get something close. I got an old Corvair. When I bought it, it had an engine fire before, and every single wire under the hood was yellow. Someone had replaced it, and I mean, it probably had 10 different colors maybe that it should have had, but they replaced it all with like 16, 18 gauge yellow wire, every single wire. So you could not troubleshoot anything. I've since remedied that, but yeah, it gets really confusing if you're trying to diagnose what's going on later and you switch from red to green or blue or some other color, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what goes where? Because it won't match your wiring diagram anymore. This was red 10 gauge. We're going to stick with red 10 gauge. The other thing is, like I said, there was already a hole going through there. It's probably, I bet that hole is big enough for this wire to pass through. But what I don't want to do is just slide a wire, even with insulation, through a raw edged sheet metal hole, because even if this thing wasn't moving, everything's moving. There's vibrations, when you walk across the floor, stuff's moving back and forth. So you might think, oh, that's never going to, wiggle around there and chafe and short out, but it will. So do it right. Put a grommet in there, which is what's sticking on here. And I just got a little Amazon kind of grab bag kind of assortment deal. These things I don't even remember, and I don't know what size it is. It probably had a legend on it when I bought it, but you know, I'm just picking it by what fit over the wire, and it was these up in the corner, if that matters. But we're gonna put a pair of calipers on the you know, on the small side of that grommet there and see what that is, and we'll open that hole up to the appropriate size and squeeze that through there, and we'll have a nice, you know, clean, not totally weatherproof, but that's okay because it wasn't before. But at least it's something that, you know, when the temperature changes and that wire kind of, you know, moves. I'm exaggerating here. You know, but that wire moves back and forth. It's you know, going to be wearing rubber on plastic, and that'll last a long, long time before it ever causes a problem. Longer than I'll be here. So you know, like I say, if you gotta do something like that, put a grommet in there. You know, do it right. You'll thank yourself later, because this is hot. When the battery's hooked up, this thing is hot all the time. And even though it's got those fusible links in it, they're kind of a hassle to change. So just kind of plan ahead. It's a whole lot harder to fix it after it's broke than to save the, you know, 15 minutes that it takes to do it right. Well, this is one of those things that you know, I think the saying is, you know, don't blindly embrace good fortune. And it may be okay, but it always makes me happy for an instant, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, this should have been harder. That grommet, the hole that I would have needed to drill for it was right about 1/4 of an inch. And so I got the drill out, got ready to enlarge this hole, and guess what? It was exactly that size, or so close that I was able to just put this little grommet in. So I can get my fingers out of the way here. You can see that's it right there, the little kind of raised area around the wire that I've rubbed some yellow powder coat on. But yeah, popped right in there. Got the wire in there, as you can see, slid right through. Exactly what I wanted to do. So that's good, I think. But again, you know, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this should have been harder. And it wasn't, so I'm going to go with it. But let's look on the other side, and you'll see what's going to happen in the engine compartment. All right, we can't exactly see where it's coming through. Well, maybe you can. Coming through that grommet back there, but that's the same wire that we were just looking at, and I've got it pulled way out so I can work up here without leaning over so far, so I can connect it to our bad lead, or well, the lead's not bad, but the bad pin in the connector here. We're just gonna kind of jumper around it and give it a better connection. Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, and I'm gonna. This isn't my favorite way of doing things, but we're gonna use this just out of convenience, and I'm gonna try to maybe kind of supercharge it a little bit. This piece right here is generically called a Scotch lock, and what it is it's like a wire tap, so you can make like a splice together. Let's see if I can pop this out one-handed so you can tell what's going on. But it more or less has an opened side that you can snap over. If you look at the end of it, and kind of snap it on the wire, the wire that you want to tap into, and then it has a blind hole right next to it. And going across both of them is that little tombstone staple piece. What's supposed to happen is, when you get them all hooked up, you mash this thing down, and it pierces the insulation on both wires and makes a connection through that tombstone to each one. Really, really handy. Like I said, they're generically called a Scotch lock because I believe this is a 3M invention. You know, Scotch tape, those guys. But this is not 3M brand, but you know, it's the same function. Pretty handy. They're a nice, quick way to to make that splice. But my concern is that they're really not gas tight. But what I mean is, it's not like you got a terminal where you got, heat shrink, and weather protection from it. There's still an ability for corrosion to get into this, and I guess that's always present. But it's not dead open like a wire nut or something like that. But I try to avoid using them if I can. But the other way to do this, it would be a whole lot harder, cutting stuff up and soldering it together. And it's tight quarters here, and this harness is connected, and to pull it out would be a major pain. So we're going to use it, and I'm going to tape it up really good and dielectric grease on the outside, maybe one or the other, maybe both. I don't know, but we'll get it sealed up good. And if it ends up causing me a problem, it is out where I can get at it and fix it. So I don't like doing things twice, but worst case scenario is I can fix it later if it has a problem. But we'll get that put on, and I'll show you how those work and what it looks like when we're done. All right, well, there's mostly installed on this here. What I did was that tombstone piece that was sticking up, I just went in here with a pair of lineman's pliers, and you just push that in, and it just, like I said, it pierces both the insulations, both wires insulation, and makes that connection through there. Now, on this side, on the tapped wire, it isn't a big deal. It's snapped on there. But on the one that you're adding, you got to make sure you push that in all the way, because you could have it kind of like down here and push that in, and it is going to make a connection. So make sure it's pushed all the way in as far as you can. So it's definitely kind of a two-hand operation. But when you get it on there, and they go on really tight. Here's what I'm talking about here. You can see kind of the open, maybe the open edge. Twist it a little bit here of why I have an issue with them. Yeah, see that shiny part? That's exposed right there. So that's the part I don't like. Now they have this nifty little cover that goes over there, but probably not gonna be able to do that one-handed. Well, almost. But anyway, it snaps shut, and oh, now it's protected, right? Well, not really. I mean, it's probably in a non-engine and engine type automotive environment, it would be okay. But we'll soup it up and seal it up as best we can. But it's a means to an end. It makes it a little bit easier. So we'll move on to the next step. All right, so I got the Scotch lock put on there, like we were talking about before. I taped it up, best I can. Try to seal that, and then I connected that wire or bypass to that Scotch lock, the original power feed. And I put the disconnect that we talked about in there. Nothing really trick about that. I mean, it's just basic part store stuff. These are supposed to be kind of weather tight, gas tight. If you haven't seen these before, like I said, I think they're called Stake On or something. I think that was the original inventor's name of them. It's just a crimped connection kind of deal. I mean, kind of beware. Some of these they don't really have any kind of sealing protection, and they're great for, under your dash or something like that. But, when you get out into the engine compartment, you need to get something that'll seal up. Some of them, which is what I actually wanted, have like a heat shrink tubing type feature to them, to where you can heat them up and they'll really seal. These don't, but we're gonna use these. The whole reason, like I said before, is so I can disconnect this if I have to drop the cradle out of here. That's the whole point of this bulkhead connector, is to take it loose. And when we're making the bypass, we can unplug this too, and it'll all come out, and it won't I won't have to cut a wire or anything. So the other thing I did, talked about this in the earlier stuff in the series, is electrical grease. This is not dielectric grease. Dielectric grease is non-conductive, and it's for kind of sealing out stuff, to keep things from conducting that you don't want to. And this is the opposite. I mean, this will is what you want to put inside the socket, which is what I did right here. I put it in the female side of that, the part that's mounted on the car, and kind of give it the best chance to make a good connection, and we'll go from there. Again, if you didn't know, you wouldn't think that was the case, but the main bolt that's right in the middle here is 1/4 inch. You'd think it'd be metric, but it's not. It's 1/4 inch. So don't fight with it like I did. Get your 1/4 inch and unscrew that thing. You'd be good to go. Let's go inside. Okay, good news, bad news time. We got it hooked up on the engine side. As you can see, it's coming through the grommet. Here's the wire that we connected. Just need to tie it into what's coming through the firewall in this bulkhead connector. Of course, nothing's ever easy. Completely different configuration on the back side here. Doesn't look anything like the plug on the other side. So I guess the good news part of it is it's got to be a 10 gauge wire. As you can see, there's one poking out here, and there's really only two. I think you can kind of see the other one kind of sneaking underneath there. So it's a 50-50 shot. But I don't like piercing any wires that I don't have to. So we're going to try to do something a little more scientific here and figure out which one it actually is, because it's not obvious when you look at that which one is which. But I think we can find out if we kind of spread them out a little bit. I think we can kind of figure it out, and then maybe we'll get the continuity tester going and improve it. So here we go. Okay, when I pulled the electrical tape, the covering off of it, I started looking, and really this is the only 10 gauge wire coming out of here. So I said that's got to be the one, and we use one of my Scotch locks that we talked about earlier. And I'm not so against these on the inside of anything, because it's really not exposed to any of the elements. The car should be kind of climate controlled. What you will notice is that I did put a disconnect here from our wire that we, our bypass wire. And the reason I did that was probably not necessary. It was sort of a cheap insurance kind of thing. I was concerned that maybe, I'm going to tap into the wrong one, and I could disconnect that and keep rolling, because I got a couple more of these. You buy these in bulk. And if I got the wrong one, I didn't waste my time. I could just, do kind of the same connection, take this off, tape it up, and keep rolling. But I think we got the right one. So I got the battery hooked back up. Let's see what it does. So let me turn around here. How about that? Get that belt squeaking a little bit, but we're going to work on that too. Could be that I just got lucky and that the connection from the damaged plug is just happening to work, but I really don't think so. I think our bypass worked. We'll do a test drive and we'll find out for sure, but I think we're good, man. How about that? There's another one in the can. Hopefully the tip was good and you can use it on your projects. Got any comments? Love to hear them. And as always, dare to be different. We'll see you next time on Smith Motor Works.